Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are getting started today with an Ayurvedic-based episode and going over 5 of the top Ayurvedic herbal adaptogens that are going to help you better deal with stress in your life. So one of the amazing things about Ayurvedic medicine is that it's been around for over 5,000 years. We know that the basis of all of natural health, for the most part, came out of India. And we know then it kind of trickled its way through China, Tibet, and moved into Europe as well. So it wasn't until, though, the 1900s or so that the, I would say, modern-based world started to catch up and say, okay, what is going on here? Why are these plant-based herbs or these herbal-based medicines still being used in the 1900s from 5,000 plus years ago? And so one of the doctors actually out of Russia who first started studying them was Dr. Nikolai Lazarev. And Dr. Lazarev was actually a medical doctor and a pharmacologist. And he wanted to look deeper into the body's ability to adapt to stress. So what he found was there was actual plant-based adaptogens that humans can use and harness the power of those plants and be able to use them to strengthen our own resistance to stress. So let's keep in mind, though, stress comes in many different forms. It is mental stress, it's emotional stress, it's physical stress, it's anything that is putting a stressor on our body, predominantly looked at as the nervous system. So let's go a little bit deeper into this, okay? So when our body feels stress in some way, it typically comes in through what's called the peripheral nervous system. There are many ways to go about this, but let's say that you stepped on a thorn. You're going to feel that, and those sensors, they're actually going to move through what's called proprioceptors in the foot, and that's going to signal the nervous system. It's going to signal to send signals to your brain and then back to your body, namely your foot, to say, ouch, we stepped on something, right? So that is a peripheral sense that's coming from out of us using the proprioceptors, which feels our environment. But we can also have an internal proprioceptor as well. We can have internal feelings going on from emotions, kind of get that gut feeling that something's not quite right. We start to feel anxious or a little bit overwhelmed or nervous. We could also have gut-based feelings, right? And the gut-based feelings could be, well, one is you could actually be a little sick to your stomach. You could have bloating or gas or constipation. And that's another sense that something is wrong in the body and absolutely is a stressor on the body. GI issues are a stressor in the body. So are toxins in the body, such as heavy metals. So we have many different ways, basically, of signaling to our brain that something is wrong. When something is wrong, oftentimes we begin to produce more neurotransmitters, such as dopamine or norepinephrine. We begin to produce more stress hormones, such as cortisol, norepinephrine being part of that chain with the HPA axis as well, meaning like, oh, we feel stress, something signals stress to our body. Let's start to produce more of those stress-based hormones. If you want to learn more about that, we've talked about those in the past. And then that begins a cascade of events that could slow our metabolism, slow our thyroid, slow hormone production, all sorts of different things. But remember, it is the nervous system affecting the endocrine system. And if you want to go really deep on this, I did a podcast on the neuroendoimmune system. And it's so important to really look into that because if you understand how the immune system becomes imbalanced, well, then you can go about repairing it. But if you don't know why the immune system could be imbalanced, then you're destined to a life of pharmaceutical drugs and all sorts of medical-based interventions, which aren't the answer, right? They're just not the answer for chronic-based dis-ease of the body. And that's because we know that there were certain signals taken in by the nervous system, the central nervous system, from the peripheral nervous system, affecting our hormones called the endocrine system, which then affects our immune system. So remember, we can reverse engineer this. But one of the great ways, though, is because we're not going to be able to totally escape stress. That would be absolutely impossible in our modern day world, at least for many of us living in our modern day world. So what we need to look at is this: how can we better adapt to stress? So Dr. Lazarev's work was actually then used in the Soviet Union for Olympic athletes and all sorts of different athletes and competitions and used in psychology, etc. And that certainly gives people an edge. There's no doubt about it. It's not illegal. And that is why many people around the world started using more of these adaptogens for sports performance. However, I use them in my practice and have used them in my practice like they've been used in Ayurvedic medicine for many thousands of years. And I'd like to share 5 of those with you today. Now, I went pretty deep on many different adaptogens before. It was a long time ago on this show. I believe that was episode 832. So if you go to stephencabral.com/832, actually, better yet, just go to stephencabral.com/1705. That's today's show. We will link up episode 832 there. So all of the notes from today's show, book reviews, all those type of things will be at episode 1705 of the Cabral Concept. Okay, so on the previous show, I went over traditional Chinese medicine adaptogens, Tibetan medicine, etc. There's different adaptogens in different countries based on what's growing there, but they all do around the same types of effects. So I'm going to share with you the Indian, the Ayurvedic ones right now. And one thing I just want you to know is that all of these, though, have really been studied by modern day science. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But in the 1970s, a lot of that research really became apparent. So about 50 years ago. And one of the people, though, who kind of led that charge, I shouldn't say they led the charge back then, but I really like how they summarized what an adaptogen is, because you might be asking yourself, well, what is an adaptogen? What are you even talking about? Well, an adaptogen meets these 3 specific criteria, and this is by Dr. David Winston. It's a substance that is non-toxin to the recipient, meaning that there's a lot of talk right now of all these plant-based compounds and how they contain phytic acid and how they contain this and lectins and that and the other thing. But we often overlook, and that's why I did a show on phytic acid as well, that a lot is bad, but a little bit can actually be really good for our bodies. So people talk about plant toxins. Well, a lot of those plant toxins are actually what helps us with staving off things like cancer, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, etc. So again, don't always take things at one Google research article, right? We need to go deeper on these things. We need to start doing some deep learning on all these Ayurvedic and all these herbal-based plants as well. Cutting them out of your diet completely can be really detrimental in the long term. Again, in the short term, well, sure, work in your gut, rebalance your gut, heal your gut, and then begin to slowly reintroduce many of these plants and plant-based foods. Okay, so non-toxic to the recipient. The second was that it influences many parts of the body, that it was non-specific. And I'll get to that in a moment. And that acts by increasing resistance of the organism to a broad spectrum of adverse biological, chemical, and physical factors. That means that basically it's kind of like a tiny little hermetic stressor. The body uses that to be able to adapt to more stress in the life, and you begin to be able to build up a better resistance. And it helps modulate system function and maintains homeostasis. So what does all that mean? Well, it means this, that when we look at conventional medicine, they started studying this way back in the 40s and 50s, actually. They started looking at Amazonian-based plants, plants in the Himalayas. So again, I've shared this story before, but when I was doing one specific internship, and this one was in northern India. So I was in the foothills of the Himalayas. Beautiful, beautiful area if you ever get to visit. And what I was doing, I was actually studying with a specific doctor right there, Dr. Moriari. And when I was studying with him, we would actually go out and we would look at all the different plants. And he would tell me, although I didn't see any one specific, I would see them not on the mountain because we were in some very remote areas, but there were people there from almost every pharmaceutical-based organization speaking with the doctors, speaking with the Vedas, speaking with different yogis, and actually saying, okay, what plant do you use this for? What is it used for? Why? Why do you think that it works? And they would be looking to then extract plant compounds, namely the isolates of those things, to then use them for pharmaceutical drugs. And the reason they don't use the whole plant, whether it's the roots, the flower, the stem, the leaves, how plant medicine is meant to be used, is because then they can't patent that. So the only reason they don't use how it's supposed to be used is they can't patent it specifically. And do remember this, that many of these drugs, about 50% or so, potentially more, of all pharmaceutical drugs are extracted from plants. And so you might be asking yourself, well, why don't we use the plant, instead of the drug? And it's a very good question. And so what I would ask you is this, is just be careful thinking that the drug does the same thing as the plant, because these plants work on the totality of the person and not isolates. That's how it's very, very different. And now again, Ayurveda always meant it to be this way as well. So That I wanted to bring you that. Very, very important to look at how that's specifically different. And now I want to jump into those 5 specific adaptogens that I was telling you about. Because after all, how now do we use this plant medicine to be able to adapt to our stress in everyday life? Well, the first one I always start out with because it's one of the most world-renowned, it's one of the most popular, and that is because it has such a broad spectrum of benefits. Okay, so it's called ashwagandha, and I'm going to give you a couple of nicknames here that have been translated, which I love. So my favorite, ashwagandha, because it has a distinct smell to it, is called the smell of a horse. So that is one of its nicknames, the smell of the horse. Some people say it smells like a horse. Some people say it gives you the strength of a horse. I would say probably more like the smell of a horse. But let's get into that. So other nicknames for it is nature's Xanax, because it's very calming and sedating. The actual Latin name, I believe it's the Latin name, is Withania somnifera. And it also goes by Indian ginseng. So if you've heard of Panax ginseng, you've heard of Siberian ginseng before, those are all great. This is Indian ginseng. And also as winter cherry as well. So the way that it works is it just like ginger has its own little isolates specifically within ginger, ashwagandha, remember, comes from the name Withania somnifera, has high amounts of withaniolides. And these specific plant compounds help to calm the mind, calm the body, calm the nervous system, enhance the libido, enhance the energy-based systems of the body. The way that this works is actually by working with the HPA axis. So your body and your brain give positive and negative feedback loops. That means when your body is stressed, you're saying, okay, produce more stress hormone, right? Produce more norepinephrine, produce more aldosterone, produce more cortisol. And there's more to it, of course, than that. You can be producing higher levels of dopamine, etc. But the body is reacting with more stress hormones, and then when the stress is over, we hope that it's over soon, then the body is supposed to get the signal, now stress is calmed, reduce cortisol, reduce norepinephrine, reduce aldosterone. The problem is many of us live in a life of chronic pain, chronic suffering, chronic emotional stress, etc. And that's why we have to, again, work on those lifestyle-wise. But what ashwagandha can do is to help to dampen that effect of stress, to help our HPA axis function at a much more normal level. So it's been shown to help reduce stress and anxiety. And these are all may, by the way. We have to say this from a clinical perspective. We have to say all of these they may reduce stress and anxiety. They may help with symptoms of depression. They may help boost muscle mass and strength and endurance. They may help improve testosterone and fertility in men. They may reduce blood sugar. It may reduce blood sugar levels. It might have anti-cancer properties. It may reduce inflammation. It may lower bad cholesterol and triglycerides, and it may improve overall brain function. There are actually studies done with Alzheimer's, with stress, you name it. And you can absolutely just, again, I did a specific show on ashwagandha, episode 770. I would definitely, again, just tune into stephencabral.com/1705. I'll link up all the adaptogens I talked about before, including the traditional Chinese medicine ones, and again, some of the Native American ones. I will also link up episode 770 just on ashwagandha. It's that important of an herb that I gave it its own Friday review as a super nutrient because it's used in so many functional medicine formulas that take the best of Ayurveda. So we've used it in our Adrenal Soothe. We've used it in our fat loss products. Like we're huge believers in it because the research is there. So we know that it worked in Ayurveda and has worked for 6,000 years. And we know that it's published scientific research that it works. So again, ashwagandha, really great product, really great adaptogen, good place to start, okay? But you don't have to just use one. I'm going to share you some more with you because typically they work better. Adaptogens work better as synergies. So you'll see oftentimes ashwagandha mixed with some of the other ones I'm about to speak about as well as the Siberian ginseng I've talked about. L-theanine, maybe even phosphatidylcholine, or phosphatidylserine, I should say, which helps to dampen those cortisol levels as well and really help out with that stress response, helps with sleep, etc. All right, so the next one I want to bring you is rhodiola. I've done a show on rhodiola as well, but here's the thing that I want you to know about rhodiola. It has many of the same benefits as ashwagandha. So it has a few other nicknames, or goes by a few other names. Golden root, rose root are two others, but And typically ashwagandha is coming from the root, but you can use different parts of it, and same with rhodiola. Now, the thing to know about rhodiola is you're going to get much of the same benefits. So about 70% of the same benefits as ashwagandha. Okay, that's why they're a great synergy together. But rhodiola is also good for people who need a little bit of energy as well. So ashwagandha helps people with more energy, almost as like a byproduct of being less stressed out. So there's more energy than to go around, right? But what rhodiola does is it actually gives you a little bit of a boost in energy. And so rhodiola with ashwagandha or without, rhodiola can be used for exercise and sports performance as well. That one's been studied all over the world too. So rhodiola, much of the benefits of ashwagandha should probably be used with ashwagandha, but then you also get the stress adaptogen plus the sports performance. So I love using rhodiola in some of my energy-based formulas as well. So we have one called Adrenal Energy Support, which supports then the energy systems of the body, right? All right. The third one is this. It is called Brahmi. Brahmi is a little confusing in Ayurveda, and here's why. It's often referred to as Bacopa, and it's also referred to in some places as Gotu-kola. And Gotu-kola, it's referred to as the herb of grace, which I love. I'm going to get into why it's referred to as the herb of grace. But so Bacopa is one of my favorite Ayurvedic names for an herb. This is really a great herb. I'm going to get to why it's a little bit different, why I picked this one, because there's so many great adaptogens. But Gotu-kola, we would hear over and over and over when I was in my first internship for Ayurveda overseas. And it was hilarious how it was pronounced. I won't do it justice, but it was just this like Gotu-kola. Like it had like this just beautiful, I mean, it's all these vowels, right? There's 2 consonants and 2 vowels in each of the words. And you've got that kind of 2 syllable, and over and over and over, we'd be talking about Gotu-kola. But then again, you could confuse it with Brahmi and over Brahmin. And but anyway, instead of me taking you back quite some time now, what I'd like to do is share with you the reason why I picked this one is because it's excellent for cardiovascular and brain health. So I chose this one because we used to use the Gotu-kola herbs in certain soups and all sorts of different things. But we'll go back to calling it Brahmi. But Brahmi is so great for the brain as well. So it's known for basically giving more clarity to thoughts, being a little bit more open to new ideas, which is why it's basically called the herb of grace. It supports the memory and the intellect. It helps improve concentration, learning, study, and focus. It balances the emotional state. It supports healthy blood cells, promotes good, healthy skin, hair, and nails, which is why you'll often see it put in some Ayurvedic oils that you could use as a hair oil or a skin oil. Really, really nice. And remember, any oils that you use in your face or your hair, rub them into your cuticles on your nails as well. Really great for the nails. So just a little bit of tip there. And one of the nice things about Brahmi as well, again, that it does improve the blood flow and the brain-based function, but it can give you a little boost in energy during the day, but it also helps with sleep at night. It's one of those ones just like ashwagandha as well. Energy during the day and great sleep at night. So that is Brahmi. The next one, this is one of my favorite herbs, favorite adaptogens for females, and that is Shatavari. Shatavari is, it's loosely translated to the woman who has 100 husbands. That is the translation for Shatavari, the woman who has 100 husbands. And if you kind of think about it like, oh, well, what does that exactly mean? Well, here's what Shatavari can do for women. It helps to balance the female reproductive system. It can act as an aphrodisiac. It can boost libido. It can help balance emotional-based stress. It can help with PMS-based pain. And it can also help with female reproductivity as well as miscarriages. Again, all of those may help with those things. So Shatavari is a really great one, especially for women experiencing some type of hormonal imbalance. And again, we work with a lot of that in our practice as well. So we don't go right to Shatavari as our first herb, but it can be a really nice add-on for women as well. And again, this might be one that you just use for 12 to 16 weeks, begin to integrate it into your nutritional supplement protocol, but certainly has a lot of science behind it. And of course, 5,000 plus years of Ayurvedic medicine. All right, I saved one for last, and that is because it is one that I don't think I've given enough credit. It is called Tulsi, also referred to as holy basil. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this overall the show to you today is even just to bring you this one specific herb. It's called the Queen of Herbs. I love all the nicknames for these. This is the Queen of all herbs. And in Ayurvedic medicine, you'll often see that many people think that traditional Chinese medicine is all about teas and Ayurvedic medicine doesn't use teas. Well, that's not necessarily true. Traditional Chinese medicine, yes, I do agree. You'll see a lot more teas where Ayurveda will do more. They basically make capsules out of ghee and raw honey, etc. But what I want to share with you is Tulsi is one of the main base leaves for a lot of the adaptogenic-based teas or stress-based leaves. And it was in 1978, right? This has been used for over 5,000 years in Ayurveda. In 1978, studies were done on herbal adaptogens, and Tulsi actually came out on their top list of herbal adaptogens in terms of helping with stress, sexual problems, cloudy thinking, forgetfulness, fatigue, as well as sleep-based issues. So what Tulsi, let me give you exactly how they found it. Research has concluded that Tulsi assists in the formation of succinate dehydrogenase, so a specific enzyme used in energy-producing mitochondria in the brain cells that's activated during stress. So Tulsi has actually been shown to help with adverse stress-induced biochemical changes in the brain. And if you think about that, if you go back and you listen to my shows on Alzheimer's, you'll notice that one of the biggest factors for Alzheimer's is higher levels of cortisol, and Tulsi may be able to help with that. So really, really great. Another thing, potentially helping with Parkinson's as well, it's shown to calm the release of dopamine and norepinephrine while normalizing the production of 5-hydroxytryptophan or 5-HTP serotonin. And it also has decent levels of vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, zinc, iron, and chlorophyll. So when you look at Tulsi, it is one of the, again, the base-based herbs or plant-based medicines that you can use in order to adapt to stress. Now, holy basil or Tulsi, the queen of herbs, can absolutely be used as a herbal-based adaptogen. But I'll tell you, much of the way that it's used in Ayurvedic medicine, and I like to use it in my practice, is to actually recommend to people to have 2 to 3 cups of Tulsi tea per day. Now, Tulsi tea can be mixed with any other type of tea that you would like. So let's say you love the taste of hibiscus tea. Great. Take a tea bag of Tulsi, take a tea bag of hibiscus, put them together, steep that, make a couple cups of tea out of that. That will enable you to keep those stress levels calmer, and you get a little flavor if you want from something else as well. Tulsi and ginger are often mixed together. There's great companies that make herbal tea. I'm going to link some of them up today at episode 1705. I do believe that it is often best used as a tea, and here's why I like Tulsi as a tea. This is a big reason why. The act of sipping a warm or hot tea in and of itself is calming to the parasympathetic nervous system. So just by sipping something warm, it's comforting, it's anti-vata, and that calms the dosha that is most out of balance when we're stressed, which is the vata dosha. So all of these things help to balance that. It enables you to feel a little bit more calm, a little bit more stable. And when you feel more calm, you feel a little bit more stable, you're better able to have better thoughts. You're better able to control your feelings, which are going to lead to better actions. And hopefully those better actions will lead to, again, better outcomes, keeping you more calm and level. So I love talking about Ayurveda. Hopefully this show was helpful. I will absolutely link them up today. And again, these are herbs that we use every single day in our practice. We use the calming herbs, herbal adaptogens in Adrenal Soothe, and we use the energizing ones in a product called Adrenal Energy Support. You can use Tulsi tea along with any of those. And I'll be sure to link up as much as I can in the notes today, the show notes. I know we can't link up supplements and show notes anymore per FDA guidelines, so we have to play by the rules. But of course, you can always look those up on your own. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there's any questions, let me know. And of course, please do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve.